Topic idea. Find the similarities between an album and a film. Example, Good Kid, Mad City, and Boys in the Hood portray young black men living in a tough environment.
Oh, that's good. Y'all can't do that till I come back.
What is up, and welcome back to the channel. With Poster Shot being a channel that gives you content on both film and music, I've thought about this topic for a while, but it wasn't until the recent episode of Dead End Hip Hop that enticed me to try to revisit this topic. And based on the title of the video, you can kind of see where we're gonna go with this. So what if classic hip hop albums were classic films? Now, before we dive into it, just let me say that there are reasons why I've hesitated on making a video about this topic. There are just so many variables to try to consider. Like, am I gonna state the obvious? Do we take into consideration albums that are clearly inspired by films or associated with films? Or what about film soundtracks? You know, those songs that we just deeply associate with a particular film, like Know the Ledge with Juice, or even We Be Clubbin' with Players Club. So you can clearly start to see how all these different factors start to play into. So trying to avoid all of that, I'm just gonna focus on the overall feeling of the album to see what film it is best associated with. Keep in mind, this is all subjective. So if you have any comparables that you'd like to call out, just let me know in the comments. So with all that being said, we're going to be going over 3 classic hip-hop albums to see which classic films they're best associated with. Now, this comparable isn't part of my 3, but I do want to call it out mainly because it was mentioned in the Dead End Hip Hop video. The example used in the question was comparing Good Kid, Mad City with Boys in the Hood. And you know what? This person completely nailed it. I mean, prior to Good Kid, Mad City, I probably would have called The Chronic Boys in the Hood, or maybe even Straight Outta Compton. You know, before the actual Straight Outta Compton. With Kendrick being around the age of someone who would have grown up on Boys in the Hood and also looking at that film as inspiration, and of course obviously he grew up in Compton and he has family that grew up in the lifestyle, so it makes perfect sense. So yeah, I think this was a pretty good call out and I agree with it 110%. It also helps me segue into the first classic album that I like to talk about in this video, which is Nas's 1994 debut, Illmatic. Nas has always been good with the pen. I mean, we can look at some of his songs and even say that those can stand as films. You can take a song like Rewind and look at a film like Memento. Take a song like I Gave You Power and look at a film like Juice. So it really shouldn't be a shock as far as how we got here. I don't feel like I have to talk about the importance of this record, but here are some of the call-outs just to help me determine which film is best suited for this album. With Illmatic, Nas paints a picture that depicts the city from a 17-year-old native. This kid is much more self-aware than his peers. Like Good Kid, Mad City, Illmatic depicts the story of a kid who has more ambitions than just being a product of his environment. He knows how to get around, he knows how to blend in and make moves. He's very observant of his surroundings and understands that there has to be a better life than this. Now, Illmatic doesn't follow a linear storyline the same way that Good Kid, Mad City does, but it does introduce us to a kid who is operating on a higher frequency in order to become the king. And this is why Fresh is the film version of Illmatic. Fresh came out in 1994, the same year that Illmatic did. The title character is played by Sean Nelson, who's an inner city kid moving drugs for the local kingpin. He spends time playing chess with his estranged father, who's played by Samuel L. Jackson. The life lessons that he's able to gather from his father during these sessions is what helps him maneuver through the city. So by the time we get to his ultimate scheme throughout the film, he's able to call checkmate. Illmatic is the ultimate chess move, and it forced everyone to rethink their position. Whether we're talking about multiple elite producers or rhyme scheme, it was an unexpected game changer that Nas started at the age of 17. The harsh reality seen through the eyes of an intelligent inner city youth is why Fresh stands next to it. The second album we're going to talk about is going to be Kanye's 2010 classic, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I'm not going to dance around this one, I'm just going to get straight into it. The film version for My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is going to be the 2010 film Black Swan. And here's why. Black Swan tells the story of a ballerina with high anxiety who's desperate to master her role in this upcoming play. The film is trying to give us this visual of what method acting looks like. You know, the whole I must become the character, I have to live with this person day in and day out, all the stuff that the great actors do. At points, this film can be very jarring, like we don't know what's real and just what's in the main character's head. This person is just starting to feel like the walls are crashing in on him. I know Kanye was getting drugged for the whole Taylor Swift thing, I still think that's funny. To me, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is Kanye West embracing that character that the world had started to see him as at that point. So there's this whole artist becoming the character dynamic that I see between this album and this film. I also see parallels with the Neon Demon, where there's just this beautiful twisted darkness. Wow, did I really just think that up myself? It's art and chaos. Focusing back on Black Swan, let's just look at our main character. She's putting herself through this dark fantasy. She's gorgeous. She's surrounded by all the lights. Her instructor holds power. Relationships with her seem tough, so it's best to just run away. She's a monster. Next album. This last one is the one I hesitate with the most. Okay, the setup. So, I've always seen this album as one film in particular. However, under a certain set of circumstances, that depiction has kind of changed a little bit. Let's talk about Raekwon's 1995 classic Only Built for Cuban Links. Liquid Swords is a close second, but this has to be my favorite solo Wu-Tang album. I've always viewed this album as the Scarface of hip-hop. Don't get me wrong, there's a little bit of New Jersey drive in there with the griminess, but opening up the album with Striving for Perfection, I don't know, man, it just gives me this Scarface vibe. You got Ghostface who's co-starring, which is like the Manolo on the album. It's hard to categorize as one genre just based on all the samples that RZA used on the album, but based on the overall subject matter, it's definitely something gangster. With Staten Island kind of being the black sheep of New York City, it plays in nicely with Tony Montana's exile from Cuba. Wu-Tang was out to show every other borough that they had the means to get it, and that's a very Scarface type of mentality. The only thing that makes me hesitate with this assessment is the release of Only Built for Cuban Links 2. Did Raekwon just make The Godfather Part 1 and 2 in hip-hop form? I don't know, you let me know in the comments. Also, let me know what films that you think tie in nicely with hip-hop classics. Leave me a comment and I'll let you know what I think. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Peace.